evidence, but we still wanted to put this to the test in the court of public opinion. So we invited a group of drivers from Edmonton, and we invited our experts, Rod and Rusty, and we're going to decide, are black boxes a good thing for driving? So I'm going to start with you, Rusty.
This is an opportunity for us to capture from a system in the car that controls a safety system, the airbags in fact, and then to use that to better understand car safety systems, to understand how the car actually acted in a given crash.
Okay, Rod, your turn.
How far do we want to go as a society to allow government and big business to monitor our privacy interests? If we want to be really safe and we have nothing to hide, let's really capture real evidence and videotape every driver 24 hours a day. It's wrong.
What's the availability of them now in vehicles?
These are installed in pretty much every car built since '97 and sold in North America. However, having said that, the capabilities have varied and the capabilities have evolved since '97. For example, the cars that had this in 1997 wouldn't track your pre-crash speed. All they would track would be the severity of the crash and how long the crash took place over.
Who has access to this information and how would they go about getting it?
The information is stored in the airbag control module. Anyone that buys what's called a crash data retrieval kit, and if that kit has access to the car that we're dealing with, can access the information. So it's publicly available to, for example, police and insurance.
Rod, do you want to help answer that?
I can't download the data myself, like Rusty said. So if I'm being investigated for a criminal offense and the police want that data, they have to get a warrant if they have grounds to believe that I've committed an offense or a suspicion even, and they can get a warrant, remove that box from my vehicle, download the data, and use that data against me in a court.
Next question.
Given that people are obviously buying cars and not aware that these are in them, are they also signing away contracts saying that yes, the insurance companies can pay the car company to have access to the information without our own approval?
I think your insurance company can say, unless you allow us to retrieve that data, if you've been in an accident, we will not cover you.
Rusty?
There's ample public notice. The courts have decided that if you read your owner's manual, you're an informed driver, and this is in the owner's manual.
Yeah, but Rusty, you can't stop the information getting out.
Just like you can't stop the police from searching your house or your car with a warrant. You can't stop them from gathering this information in a crash. That's reasonable.
My concern is that this goes beyond information. This goes to behavior tracking, which is more than any sort of hard data that you would ever find in a trunk or in a car. This is actual monitoring of behavior. Do you have any response to that? It's a step beyond the normal information found through a warrant?
The idea that we'd want to put GPS in a car is impractical and unrealistic. This doesn't track where you've been, where you're going, what you're doing, and who you're doing it with. It doesn't record your voice, okay? It doesn't record anything other than the speed of your vehicle, whether or not you're wearing your seatbelt, and how bad the crash was.
Well, Rusty, what do you think about insurance companies mandating or testing about, in addition with the black box, putting in a GPS so they can track where you've been, and a GPS can track how fast you've been going, but also exactly where you've been within a few feet?
I think that monitoring what's happened just before a collision is a far different issue than a TV camera in a car or a GPS unit in a car.
If this becomes allowable, what's to stop other things from being allowable?
Rod?
It's the slippery slope, and I agree with you. Do we just stop with the black box? Or do we let technology take over?
That is my fear right there.
I have a follow-up question there. Can they be wrong?
They can be wrong, surely they can. But again, we're talking about a crash situation. We're talking about these should be read by and analyzed by trained crash reconstructionists who've already investigated the crash and already know what actually happened in the crash, and then use this to objectively verify what actually happened.
I don't disagree with them about the integrity of the data, but there's also a danger that the data can be misinterpreted in court. And if you are a litigant, you have to be very, very cautious and careful that the data is being properly interpreted, because these boxes don't measure wheel spin in the winter. this box might measure a high rate of speed when in fact the wheels are spinning.
But you know what? 50% of the time it's going to be evidence for you. Okay, it's going to be showing that you didn't do anything wrong, that you weren't speeding, and that maybe, just maybe, the police that did the investigation got it wrong, and what's in here is right. So it's going to help you just as many times as it's theoretically going to hurt you.
The argument that you have nothing to fear if you haven't done anything wrong doesn't hold any ground with me. To have a device in your car that is technically owned by me because I own my car, that can therefore 50% of the time incriminate me later, terrifies me.
And this is not self-incrimination. Your behavior, that the way you conduct yourself in public is open to anybody that's out there. I can see you driving down the street at 160, and that's incriminating in and of itself.
To have access to this black box of mine that's in my car that I own isn't drastically different than having access, open access to my diary that I keep of what I was doing at a specific date and time, or having access to my personal thoughts and making me testify to them when I'm not willing to.
Actually, it's enormously different because your diary and your thoughts and what you do in your house are covered because there's an expectation of privacy. There is no expectation of privacy when you're driving down the street.
Really, you have to look at where the next step for the technology is going to be. Again, is this the last step? And I think if consumers said, I'm not buying a GM if this stuff is going to be used against me in a vehicle, I think GM would quit making black boxes that could download data for the police and for insurance companies.
But that's an unfair assessment because it's not just GM, it's every manufacturer.
Well, and I use that as an example.
Cost benefit to the consumer, though, who has the option.
So do we have sort of a unanimous decision on whether black boxes in cars are good for the average driver?
They're good for safety if they deploy airbags and all of that, for sure. But to be used in a defense or to incriminate somebody, I can't see it being of any value.
I agree.
So we've got agreed nods here. It seems to me you're on the out there.
I really believe that driving is a privilege. I think that if you smash into something out on the road, that the public, insurance companies included, deserve to know how fast you were going and if you had your foot on the brake or not.
So I have one further question. Now that you know it's in your cars, are you going to drive differently?
I'm glad I have an old car.